get across to you guys in terms of the way you're going to now create your website. Once we set ourselves up in Dreamweaver and you start creating your web pages, we're going to use what they call the box model. Okay, and so basically it's a bunch of divs or div tags, containers that you're going to create. To create your layout, you're going to use a div container instead of just having your image on top, text right below that, and so on and so on. So that we don't have just a one top to bottom type of setup. Basically, you'll be able to create 2 columns, 3 columns, whatever type thing, a footer and a header. Have it all each different parts of it, different colors or matching or whatever way you want to set it up. So in Flash, I'm going to show you real quickly what I mean in terms of just to get the overall idea. So basically, you're going to start out with an overall container that's going to hold out everything, which we'll call the wrapper. Okay, so that'll contain everything in there, so that we can control the layout. Then we'll start off with a header. Oops, actually, let me change the color on that. So as you'll notice, the header will be going inside the wrapper. Well, everything else was going to be pretty much going inside the wrapper. Then maybe we'll have maybe we'll have a nav bar. Change the color of that. So then you would have maybe a nav bar that would go in there. And then we may have decided, maybe you decide to do an aside. Let me change the color on that one real quick. And then maybe you decide to have a main section. Okay. Change the color on that. Keep doing that. And then you would have maybe a footer. Let's see, do it red. So as you can see, this layout, again, I'm drawing it out in Flash, but the important thing to understand is that you have a main section, okay, or a wrapper that's in the background, which is the yellow, that's holding everything together. Then we have the header where you may have a logo, an image, or something like that. Then maybe you have a nav bar, horizontal nav bar over here. Or maybe you have a vertical nav bar, or you just have some kind of article on here on this side, announcements, a banner, whatever, and the main section here. And obviously you can flip this around. Maybe you decide to have it this way instead of left nav bar or left section, and so on. And then maybe you have a footer where you have some more of your nav system that would be text-based and so on. That you have copyright stuff in there or other buttons and so on. So again, it's all up to you in terms of how you design it. So let's look at real quickly, for instance, some websites. As you can see here, like the Mesa website. So you have basically you have your in this case you have a nav bar up here, and you have one also right here, which they're all drop down, right? But this is consistent. You have the logo here, you have this blue background, or it could be an image, it could be the background is blue. You have what they call a hero image on here, and again, you don't have to design it this way, and then you have some columns type setup, and these are all sections, boxes that are created through div tags, okay? And then you have a footer, all the way down at the bottom over here, right? Here's another, by the way, this w3school.com, you have, should be on your, under multimedia, W3 School on every browser. This is a great tutorial site that you guys can look at in terms of learning CSS, HTML, and so on. Okay, but I'm just going to use this as an example in terms of, again, how they created a header. They have a logo up here, white background. They have, as you'll notice, obviously you have a nav bar on the top, and also they have a horizontal nav bar. And then in some cases, you know, rollover type, and then in this case, text-based. And then you have just one main, a main section here, and then if you'll notice on the left, on the right, they have another section, another area where they have some information on there. You know, as you can see, announcements and things like that. So you can, you know, design it in all these different ways. If I scroll down, again, you have the footer on the bottom of this, right? So there's different ways to design it in terms of when you decide you want to design your website. The box model allows you to be able to do whatever type of design you want to, whatever way you want to design it. So if you want to go with this type of design, or if you want to go with this type of design where you have several sections, boxes, and things like that that you can set up on your website. Okay, so again, up to you how you decide it. So I'm going to hopefully show you how to do that in Dreamweaver. Okay, so now jumping back to Dreamweaver. Really important. Some of you guys, you know, from some of the grading, I haven't been able to finish all the grading, but some of you guys did have broken images and things like that. And that was due to how you set up your web page. Also, in terms of not setting up an image folder or grabbing images from outside of the folder and things like that. That made it, or you had images that had an absolute path. And so we want to avoid that. We want a relative path. We want relative to the root folder. Okay, so that meaning where you have all your assets, all your HTML files, all your image folders, and so on. We want to stay relative with that. Okay, so in order to do that, Dreamweaver, if you go to the Files tab, and if you don't see that, you can go under Window, Files, and bring that up, and it'll pop up the panel. You can create a website. So you define a website. And that's what you want to do. That's the first thing you want to do is to define a website. So this way, what's going to happen is that it'll help keep your images and everything relative to the way that you set up your website. So for instance, I'm going to define a new website here. So notice right here we have two websites defined already, right? So I'm going to define another one. To do that, I'm going to select Manage Sites. And now what I'll do is make sure I deselect anything here, and I'm going to create new site. I'm going to name the site. So kiteboarding 2. I'm going to select a folder where I'm going to house my site. So you'll notice that I'll be either creating a folder or selecting an existing folder where maybe I have my images and things like that. Okay. So in this case, I could select this folder right here where I already have some files and images and things like that. But what I'll do is I'll just create a new folder. Actually, since I selected that, I want to actually just select Multimedia 101, new folder. And within that folder, I'm going to just go ahead and create an image folder, since I'm already there. But I want to make sure that this is the folder that's selected as my root folder. So my root folder is where everything's going to be put. My HTML files, my assets, my images, everything. So that's what we consider the root folder. All right, so I'm choosing that as my root folder. So I'm going to click choose. Notice right here, and pay attention to the path right here. Notice it says volumes, faculty, multimedia 101, kiteboarding 2, right? That's my the new folder that I created. It doesn't say images or / images, but kiteboarding 2. So this way I know everything will be going to be saved there. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now it's part of my new managed site. So I'll click done. And then up here, I'm going to look to see that kiteboarding 2 is the site that's selected. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start my new HTML document. So I'm going to click on HTML. Select HTML right here. You have other type of documents that we could select. Doc type, we want to make sure it's HTML5. Document title, I can start with the document title on here. So kiteboarding 2. And I'm going to go ahead and click create. Now keep in mind we're going to define a CSS file to be able to control our layout. But before that, I'm going to go ahead and start by doing, if you'll notice right here, I'm going to set this up. But in order to set this up, I would have been able to do this right here with, once I've defined the containers and then I tell it to have the different colors I want on there and so on. But normally this is what it will start to look like. So actually, put a blank keyframe here. So when I start in Dreamweaver, it'll start to basically look like this. It'll have the wrapper container, then let's try that again. So again, this is the wrapper container. Then what will happen is that when we create it, the second container will go inside of that wrapper container, but it will be stacked on top of it, inside of it. Then from there, you'll start to see the other containers being created. But for the most part, the way it'll start looking like is that they'll start to just be small containers, okay, that will start being created in terms of when you're setting this up initially. It'll just look like that. It will not look like this, okay? So bear with me in terms of, at the beginning, this is what it'll start looking like in Dreamweaver, but then we'll start applying the CSS rules to it, and then eventually we'll have a layout that will look something like this. Maybe not the colors, but in terms of the layout. Okay. All right. So, and I'll point to you on the. I'm doing the split view so you guys can see the tags and so on. So to start with, I'm going to go ahead and save it. And notice right away, because I defined the site, it went right to the kiteboarding 2. I didn't have to go looking for the folder. So I'm going to name it index. Save it. Okay. So I'm just going to put my cursor within, the design area. And we're going to go to the insert panel. And I'm going to start with a div tag. Okay, so I'm going to click on the very first one under HTML. Notice we have HTML, form, templates, all these other type of things. We want to start under insert, HTML. I'm going to select div. And I want it to be at the insertion point where I clicked in the design area. I don't have any class developed yet, but I want to give it an ID. And this is important to understand. We want to make sure we start IDing our containers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and call it wrapper, as I mentioned before, because this is what's going to hold everything together. I'm going to click OK. Now you'll notice that it goes ahead and puts some content on there, right? So I'm just going to delete that content because I don't need that in there. But you'll notice here in the tags it says div ID wrapper, and then this is the closing tag. All right. So now, as I said before, I'll start building my containers within that one div container or tag. You can look. So I'm going to go down to over here, this section, still under HTML. I'm going to select header. And, before I do that, yeah, I want to make sure it's, that my cursor is blinking inside that div container, which I can see over here in my HTML tag, and I can see by clicking inside of it. Before I go ahead and insert the header. So I'm going to click header. Then I'm going to just give it a ID again, underscore header. So my underscore header. You can name it whatever, but as you'll notice, you can't really tell the difference that there are two containers in here, but we know by looking at right here, we can see that we have the div and then we have the header tags. And when I select it, it looks like we're selecting two things, but you'll see it will start to break apart. All right, so the other thing I want to make sure I'm within my div container. So I'm going to put my cursor so it's blinking outside in my code view. So it's blinking outside of my header tags, but inside the div tags, the wrapper div tags. And I want to create a nav bar or nav container. So again, I'm going to name it my underscore nav. And as I said before, you can name it whatever. And I'm just going to continue to do that. So I have my nav now. You'll notice that we have the nav right here. I can select it right here, or I can come down to my tag selector in the bottom and select it there. Or I can select the wrapper, the whole wrapper again, or I can select the header. All right, but now the header and the nav are within that wrapper container. All right, so now, again, and so again, notice it's stacking. All right. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and insert a section. I'm just going to call it main because this is going to be my main section. So I'm going to ID it that way. Put my cursor outside of it. I'm going to do an aside. Left side. So I'm going to make that the left side. That'll be, now again, they're just stacking on top of each other, right? And then making sure I'm still within my div container. I'm going to add a footer. So my underscore footer. And by the way, again, I'm not putting leaving spaces in between, especially in ID. You never want to leave spaces. You can do camel casing, meaning that we can change instead of underscore. I can make this capital F. That's called camel casing. Lowercase m, then uppercase. In terms of the other word that you want to start with. But I'll leave it as underscore. All right. Okay, so I've kind of set it up so that's going to pretty much look something like this eventually. Okay, header, the header, the nav, main section. Well, in this case, it's on the right side. That's fine. Doesn't matter. We had it on the left, and then our footer. Okay. All right. So now that I have this set up, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little save. Command S. Now that I have it saved, I will start what I need to do in order to control my layout. As you can see, everything's just stacked on top of each other. So to get it to look like I showed you before, I need to create, I need to use CSS to be able to control that. So I can, if I want to center things within it, if I want the text to be a certain way, if I want the layout to be on the top, this certain width, certain height, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to use Cascading style sheet. The beauty of using Cascading style sheet is this, that once I create one file, one CSS file, I can use that one file and link it to as many pages, HTML pages as I want. So I can have 100 HTML pages created, and they will all be linked to that one file. And if I want to change, for instance, say that I want to change this header from, or this main section from this particular color to some other color, I can do that, and every page will be changed, not just that one page. So again, that's the beauty of using CSS and linking to it. We don't want to embed it. We don't want to be. We don't want it so that it's part of the HTML code in here. We just want to link to it. So we want it to be a separate file. So that's what I'm going to look for also, that you've linked it and not embedded your CSS. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go to my CSS Designer panel. Now, if you look at it right now, this may be what you see. You may not see the properties. So in order to see the properties, I need to click and drag it out a little bit, and then you'll see the properties. You'll always see the selectors, the source, and so on, and media. We're going to focus on source, selectors, and properties. So here I need to create a new CSS file. So I'm going to click on the plus, create a new CSS file. I'm going to find it, or I'm going to browse to my folder. Again, notice it pops right into Kiteboarding 2. Okay. And then I'm just going to name it.
Where's the plus? Which plus is it?
I'll show you in a minute. Actually, I'm going to do a camel casing on this one. So it'll be named My CSS. It's going to be linked, and I'm going to click OK. So notice right here, under the head tags, not to be confused with the headers, okay? Under the head tags, it's linked right here. And that's how that is linked to. And then notice over here, it's created a new CSS file. It's not, doesn't have any rules in it yet, but we'll come back and look at that later on as we create some rules. So to start with, let's create the wrapper rule, which will tell it to be a certain size, a certain width, and so on. Okay. So to do that, I need to be able to select my wrapper. So I can click on in my code view here, or again, I can go down to my selector if I don't have my code view up. And my wrapper is what's being selected. So I want to create a new rule for that. So I'm going to go to selectors, click on the plus. And you'll notice because I had the wrapper selected, it created the name for me. I could, because I'm targeting that wrapper, which has the ID of wrapper, okay, or that container, which has the ID of wrapper, it puts a pound sign in front of it. Everybody see that? Because there's a pound sign, that's an ID type of CSS rule. All right, so I've created the rule, and you'll notice that it does not have any properties to it. This shows if there's any properties, it shows that particular property when show set is clicked. I'm going to uncheck that so I can see all the available properties that I can apply to that rule. Okay? All right. So the only property I'm going to at least apply for now, well, a couple of properties. I'm going to do the width, and I'm going to use a percentage here. So I'm going to say about 80% in terms of the width. I'm not going to use pixels. I could use pixel size. Notice that already the box has gone smaller. It's not 100% all the way out to here. The other thing I want to do is center it. So right now, as you can see, it's over. It's the box is all the way over to the left, right? To center it, I'm going to go to the margins, and I'm going to under PX. I'm going to select that and select Auto on the right side, left side, and notice it creates this margin area right here. Then I'm going to go on the right side where it says again PX, which stands for pixels. I'm going to select Auto. And then now it puts this margin. So no matter what size this area will be, it will automatically resize it. so that it fits within that browser or anything else. So if we go here to live view, no, we can't see anything, but you'll notice that by the way, the live view tries to mimic a browser. That's why I went to the live view. All right, I'm gonna go back to design view. Now, if you go to CSS, again, to the file, notice the wrapper ID was created. The rule pound, and then here is the rules itself, which, by the way, you can type these things in. You can, everything in HTML you can pretty much code in terms of if you wanted to do it that way. Okay, so we have that. Now, let's do the header. Now, again, as I said before, I'm going to use multicolors here just for visual purposes. Again, you're not going to want to do this for a website. You notice when we look at these other websites, they don't have all these multicolors built into it. They have a certain color scheme, right? So, again, keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to select my head, my head, not my head, but the header over here. So I'm going to select the header, and I did it by going down to the code selector down at the bottom, and you'll notice right here it's selected also. So I'm going to click on new. I'm going to create a new rule, and I want it to be an ID, and I want it to be an ID rule that only, though, is a rule for my header. Here, if I leave it like this, since I selected it, it's saying that, okay, you selected the header, but is also, if I leave the pound wrapper, it'll also affect anything that has an ID of wrapper. Okay, but we want to just focus on my header. So I'm going to delete that. All right, so I have my header selected. Again, we'll put it in a different color. So up here, we can go and look for either, so it brings it down to the section of text or borders or whatever. I'm going to select on background. So I'm going to change the background color. I'm just going to select random colors here. And notice now the header is red. Okay. And for now, I'm not going to worry about, because I'm going to put in the header, I'm going to put an image in there. Okay, so notice I'm not going to change the width or the heights or anything like that. Which, by the way, so now notice I've made this, I've changed that on the wrapper, right? Or the header. And you'll notice we have all these other properties. If I just want to see the rule, the one rule that's affecting, or the one property that's affecting that rule, I can click on Show Set, and notice it only shows me that particular property. So if I go to wrappers, notice I have the width, and then I have the margin because I clicked on Show Set. It doesn't show me everything in terms of what's possible. So keep that in mind. All right, so I'll go ahead and insert an image here. I'll go ahead and get rid of that content. So I'm going to go insert image, and I can look for an image, but I don't have an image in there. So I will go to the kiteboarding one, or some other images that I can download. So I'll go ahead and click, select the header there, or it's a banner type image. I'll go ahead and insert that. Now, because I defined my site, and this is important to understand, and this is, remember, I'm grabbing this image from somewhere else, and this is the problem some of you guys had, that your path stayed absolute for where you grabbed it. But because I defined the site, see, it's going to ask me, this file is outside of the root folder of the kiteboarding 2, basically asking me, do you want to make a copy of it in that in your new defined site? So I want to say yes, and it will bring up the folder. And remember, there's no images in my image folder, so I'm going to select image in there, and I'm going to save it in that new defined image folder. So again, we look for kiteboarding 2 image. So I'm going to click and save and select save. Okay, so now I have the image, and it's part of my header. Okay, and by the way, if I want to change the colors on here, I can go down to my header, and let's see, show set, and now I can change it to match maybe something on there. I can click on the eyedropper and say we'll click on the white. And now my header is white instead of red. Okay. All right, so my nav. So I'm going to put something in there, just temporary. So I'm going to go ahead, type in home, put a pipe in there, about, put a pipe in there, products, and then contact. And maybe I'll change the colors on there instead of white background. Oh, no, that's my header ID. So maybe I'll create a rule for that. So I'm going to put my cursor inside the nav container. I'm going to click the plus. Notice wrapper always comes up because it's the nav is within the wrapper container. But again, I just want to focus on my nav. So that's created. Uncheck this so I can see all my properties. I'm going to go to background. Background color, where is it? So I'm going to click on there. I'm going to use a sample. Maybe I'll sample light blue on there. Yeah, maybe not. We'll just keep it white for now. Or I'll take a sample of the white, this particular white here. We'll keep it white for now. Later on, we'll come back and change the text on there. Okay, so on my main section, I'm going to make this actually be on the right side, and then I want it to be, a certain width of my full container or my full wrapper. So I'm going to select that again, create the plus. Notice again it comes up with the wrapper because it's within the wrapper. I'm going to delete that. Just leave the ID main as a rule because that's going to be my main container. We'll change the background colors for now to red. And it's red. I want the width to be 1%. And probably I'll start with right now 70%. We'll see what happens. We may change that later on. So it's 70% within the main container. So it's 70% of that, not the whole website, but 70% of that within that container. Okay. And I want this to be over to the right side. So let me actually put some text in there. Let me go here. I have some text in here. All right, so I'm just going to grab some Lorem Ipsum text. So I'm going to paste that in there. All right, so I have some text pasted in there, but did I paste it in the right spot? No, I didn't paste it. There we go. All right, so now it's within my main section, but you'll notice it's still over to the left. So I'm going to go make sure the main containers or the main rule is selected. I'm going to scroll down to where it says float. So keep that in mind, float. I'm going to float it to the right. Okay, notice it jumps over to right. But notice everything else kind of moves over to the left. So we have to kind of fix all that other stuff. And we'll fix that in a few minutes. So then I'm going to go to my left ID here, where it says content left ID. And I'm going to put some text in there. Now notice as it pushes it down and it kind of wraps around this. But I want it to be a certain width so that it doesn't wrap around, but it just continues down as a column. Okay? So putting my cursor within that, what it used to be the left side, I'm going to create a new rule. Notice it says left side, paragraph, because I put my cursor within the paragraph, it also included the P tag. So I'm going to get rid of that and get rid of the wrapper. So it's just left side. So it only affects that within that container. Okay, so we're gonna do, again, the width, percentage, and let's see, I made it 70%, so we'll make it 20% for now. And notice it sets it up so it's 20%, and we'll fix that a little bit more in a few minutes. Okay, so left side, and we'll make it a light blue color or something like that in terms of the colors. Or color of the water. Can I not do that? Oh, I applied a gradient to it, and I don't want to apply a gradient. Not yet. Okay, so we'll fix that in terms so that we have enough of contrast between the text and the background color. All right. Okay, so notice we have some text in here, we have some text in there. Now we're starting to see the column, and as you notice, the footer was moved all the way down, which is fine. By the way, so if we look at my CSS rules, now we're starting to see more rules that have been created within my CSS file. Okay, so if I look at the design view right now, this is what we have going on. Now, to make sure that if you'll notice, if I get rid of this much text, say I get rid of this much text, notice what happens to my footer. Because my footer moves up, all the way up, but it's behind or on top of my main section. So I may or may not have this much text or content within that left side, but I always want the footer to be pushed below. Okay? So it looked like it was pushed below, but as soon as I got rid of that text, boom, it moved up. So in order to fix that, again, I'm going to come up with another rule that fixes that. So it always stays below any sections or any size that I create. So I'm going to put my cursor there. As usual, I'm going to click on the plus. Get rid of wrapper, so it's just my footer. Now, the one thing I need to do here, in terms of making sure that it's always clearing all those particular sections, is I'm going to click on right here where it says clear both. So under clear, right below float, clear both. And notice what it does, it moves down. And just so we can see it better, I'm going to go ahead and change the color background on there. Okay, so for the most part, I've created my layout, right? I'll click Save All, so I can, when I do Save All, it also saves any content or any new content that I've created within my CSS file. And let's do a quick little preview. Oh, that's right, this is not working on mine. For some reason on my preview it's not working, so I'm going to go to my Finder. Let's preview it there. So I may have to, I'm going directly to my folder to actually be able to preview it. So here it is. Double click on it so it opens up in Firefox. And again, we can see how it's beginning to look. All right, so a few things to fix this up that you may need to do to fix it. All right. So you'll notice that we have like the red section is a little higher than the blue section, and so on. And this is butted right up against it. We have this wide gap on there. So let's fix some of those things up a little bit. Okay. All right, so going back to Dreamweaver, even though over here it kind of looks the same, I don't know why it does that, but anyway. Let's make sure we don't have any tags straggling along there. All right. So one of the things I want to do is I want to bring this out so it's not butted up right up against the side section's not right butted up against the container. So I'm going to go back to my left side rule, and I'm going to go to my margin. And maybe on the left margin, and I'll leave it as pixels, I'm just going to change that. And I can scroll, as you can see, and notice that it pushes it over a little bit, right? So maybe something like that. Pushes it over a little bit on there. I don't like the fact also that even though it's this color, maybe we don't have a color, but that the text butts up right against the container itself. So for that, I'm going to go to my padding. So the padding, it creates like sort of like a margin, but inside the container. The margin creates a margin outside of the container. So I'm going to click and drag that. And notice we have a little bit of gutter over here. So it's looking a little bit better now. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the main. I don't need to increase the container size on there. Actually, maybe I'll even actually go back to my left side here. Increase the margin a little bit more. But I will increase the padding on the main side. So there's a little bit of padding on there. Also on the left side or right side. A little too much. Maybe come back over here. Okay. All right, so we did that. Now we want to make sure there's enough margin on the footer here. So I'm going to select the footer. Go to my footer, and then I'm going to increase the margin on the top here to maybe 10 pixels or something. So there's always a margin there. So notice that when I select the footer, you'll see the little bit of margin there. Save that. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is now, so I've created all these rules that are ID because they have a pound on it, right, or a hashtag in front of it. Those are our ID rules. We have to ID something and then select it and make a rule for it. Now I want to create a tag rule. So that means that it's going to affect, it will affect any of these tags right here in HTML. So for instance, I could create a header or a body tag. I could create a div tag. I could create an aside tag, a paragraph tag, a header tag, and so on. That affects all these tags within that HTML document. So one of the tags I'll create, for instance, or one of the tag rules, I should say, and also create a tag on it, is we'll create our main page. So this will be, I'll change this format to level 1 heading. And then we'll do the same here. So I have my level 1 headings, right? And so that means I can create, if I want to, I can create a level 1 type heading. So I'm just going to click on kiteboarding, and I'll create a heading type rule. Now notice because I have, when I clicked on kiteboarding, because that text is within the wrapper, within the main section, it went ahead and created those other two, it assigned those other two names to it. But I just want to affect all headings, not just the ones that are within that container, but any headings within anywhere. So I'm going to delete that and just leave it as H1. So that means that all headings, anywhere that I assign a heading 1 to it will be affected. So that means it'll be affected here and here, not just here. All right, so I'm going to go down to the text, and I want to change the color of the text to be white, for instance. So notice right away, boom, both headings are changed to white. And I wanted the font to be something else than that, Arial type font. And now they're both Arial type fonts. Okay? So that's a tag rule. I could set up something for a paragraph. So all my paragraphs are certain colors and so on. Okay? So that's the tag rule. This is an ID type rule. The other rule is a class rule that I want to apply. So a class rule may be something that that I select and I apply that class to. So I'm going to add an image right here. So I'm going to insert another image. So we'll say that one right there. So again, it's asking me because I grabbed this image from somewhere else. If I want to get it, want to make a copy of it in my image folder, I want to in my existing site. Yes, I want to do that. I don't want it this large, so I'm going to resize it. I can click and drag, holding down the Shift key to resize it. By the way, resizing it does not mean that the size right here changes in terms of the overall size of the image, which is 25Ks. You have to do that in Photoshop. Okay. So anyway, so I'll go ahead and resize it. Now, what I want to happen here is I want the text to wrap around this image and not just be not just be like a letter itself. All right, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to come up with it. Well, actually, I'll just deselect it, and I'll create a new class rule by clicking on the plus sign. And because I have my cursor there, it came up with its own name. But I'm going to come up with my own name here, and starting with a period. When I start with a period, it designates it as a class rule, a rule that I can apply to anything. So let's see, I'm going to call it my IMG, my images. So, you could call it whatever, my wrapper type image, or, but anyway, again, no spaces, but it starts with a period. All right, so what do I want? I want the text to wrap around it. I want some spacing between the text and the image. So again, it's not applied on here. I have to come up with that idea here. So probably on the left, I'm going to create a left margin, maybe of 15 pixels or 14 pixels. That's fine. I probably wanted to float left. Because when I select this image, I'll apply it. I want everything else to float left around it. And for now, I'll leave it at that. Let's see what happens. So okay, so I've come up with those rules. Notice nothing's changed on the image, right? Because I haven't applied that class to it. So I have to select the image or the text or the container or whatever I'm going to apply this class to. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to, in my properties panel, so by the way, in your property, if you don't have your properties panel, you go up to Window Properties. Then under Class, I'm going to select my IMG. That's the only class rules that's showing up because it's the only one I've created. Now when I've done that, notice that it went ahead and wrapped around it, right? Let me make it a little smaller, just show you what I mean. But, there's still some room for improvement there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my class rule, and I'm going to increase. Actually, I should have changed this to 0, and I meant to do the right margin. Change that to 10. Notice right here, put a little bit of gap to it. If I want to, let's see what else could I do to it. Maybe to make it a little bit better. Could put a border around it. So maybe a thin border. Notice now it has a little thin border around the image. So I could change the color on it and all that kind of stuff. So now this image has a little thin border on it. If I want it maybe a little thicker, I can change it, and so on. So, and I can apply that to anything. So if I wanted to, I could even apply it to this text, or this text right here, or whatever. But the point is, it's a class rule. So let me see if it works. I'm going to select this. Didn't quite work for that. I didn't think it would. But anyway, for the most part, I can, if I wanted to, I can apply it to this image right here. So I can select this and select under my image, and notice it has a border around it, and so on, right? But again, I'm not going to do that. But you get the idea. All right, so I've come up with rules. So 3 different type of rules: ID rules, tag rule, which could be a paragraph rule, could be a body rule. Again, all you have to do is just look at all these different type of tags that are in here, or that you want to affect, and then you start applying those rules to it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Go back to here. Reload it. And again, notice, oops. All right, we have to go back over here. Save all. There we go. Reload it. And there's the rules being applied. Okay. Any questions? All right, I think that's pretty much what we covered. Yeah.